Tyler Shough doesn't even need to be on the football field to impress. We got all that and a little bit of lanyap for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, the Saints have replaced their director of rehab, which might be one of the most important positions that they have made a change over the course of the past few years. We'll take a look at Vernon Broughton, who is maybe a little bit more impressive than I think he's given credit. But I want to start off with somebody that has impressed even without being on the football field as of late, and that is rookie quarterback Tyler Shough. We got all that for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time being here with us this time, making us your first listen and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Tyler Shough doesn't even need to be on the football field in order to impress and further endear himself to the New Orleans Saints fan base. In a recent appearance on the St. Brown podcast, he said three different things that I think were really important. And that showed you a little bit of what it is that has made Tyler Shough so impressive throughout the entire process that led him here to New Orleans. And I'm not just talking about what he's done, mandatory minicamp, OTAs, rookie minicamp, but clearly endearing himself and doing the things that ingratiated himself to Kellen Moore and this New Orleans Saints organization in order to make him the highest drafted quarterback since the 1970s in the NFL draft in earnest, right? We know Dave Wilson back 1988 in the supplemental draft, but it was Archie back in 71 that was the most recently highly drafted quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. And so during the appearance, three things that stood out. Number one, his maturity. Number two is composure, as well as number three, his continuing embrace of the city. And I kind of want to start, I actually want to start there, embracing the city. So far, we've seen Tyler Shough go to dinner at Drago's. We've heard him shout out other great New Orleans institutions, restaurants, things like that. We have heard him tell the story of popping a tire on a pothole in his truck. We have heard him about learning about car tire insurance from those of us in New Orleans media. When we were chatting with him about it, we saw him learning how to shuck oysters over at another New Orleans institution. We've seen even more from him in terms of him dancing and having a great time during a second line when the rookie class was introduced to the city, which good thing to do by the New Orleans Saints, making sure that their rookies are quickly getting into the fold of the New Orleans culture, second lines, culture museums, all these other things, really cool opportunities for these young guys to get connected. But you're seeing Tyler Shough really buy in all the way down to his defense against former New Orleans Saints practice squad wide receiver Equanimeous St. Brown, who has time and time again insulted Louisiana cuisine, saying that it's overrated, that it's just regular. I don't know where he's eating, but it ain't my grandma's house, that's for sure. And so I don't know where it is that he's getting his food. But when it comes down to it, quickly, Tyler Shough shutting him down. Well, maybe that's why you're not on the team anymore. Equanimeous is what Tyler Shough said. So good banter, good, good lightheartedness, all those other things, but also sticking up for what is now his city. So obviously, the endearing himself to the fan base box continues to be checked. And whether he got really good advice, whether he is, overplaying it a little bit, whatever it might be, nobody cares. It's just, people are just happy to see him doing it because in the 2 months that he's been a New Orleans Saint, he's done more in this community and seems to have ingratiated himself and endeared himself to this community more than Derek Carr. I guess I could say Dennis Allen too, but Derek Carr did in his 2 years here. Not to compare the two, but you talk about where Saints fans are coming from to what Saints are looking for, and now what Saints fans are getting. Tyler Shough's doing a really good job there. The other things that I complimented him on were his maturity and his composure. There was a moment where Amon-Ra St. Brown was actually giving Tyler Shough credit but he was bringing up the age thing, right? He was saying that he and Tyler Shough, which this is true, fifth year wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown and Tyler Shough were in the same high school class together. And now all of a sudden, he's going into his fifth year, the wideout is, and Tyler Shough's coming in as a rookie. And Amon-Ra brought that up and went on to also mention that, like, your mindset, your maturity, you're clearly ready. Like, that's kind of the point that he was making. But we know that the age thing has been a big criticism of Tyler Shough's going through and into the draft process and coming out of the draft process as well. And Tyler Shough did a really good thing where he didn't take it as an insult. He didn't get upset. He didn't get defensive. What he did instead was that he basically explained a general theory that development is nonlinear, that not everybody's journey looks the same. And it harkened back to, I talked about this on the squad show with Lance, Dylan, and John as well on Thursday morning about Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning recently was on a panel for Fanatics Fest, and CJ Stroud was a part of that and was a part of the conversation as well. And he talked about how people talk about how CJ Stroud had a down year last year in his second year getting into the playoffs and winning a playoff game. And Peyton Manning was like, dude, it took me 6 years to win my first playoff game. And so development, success, trajectories are not all the same, right? There's no just one route to being successful in the NFL. And look, Peyton Manning went on to be one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game, Super Bowl champion, all those other pieces. CJ Stroud may never enter that conversation, but he won his first playoff game before Peyton Manning did. So the trajectories are going to be different, right? The meandering sort of pathway and circuitous pathway of the NFL is unpredictable. And for Tyler Shough, who is looking at it from that perspective, he feels that he has the best coaching ahead of him. He feels that he has the best opportunity ahead of him. He feels he has his best ability, like his best game ahead of him as well. We'll see if any of that is the truth. But it is important to remember that whether he's 26 years old going into his first game, he's 27 years old, or he's 22 years old, the onus of success comes down to not only him, but the organization to put him in position to be successful. And I think everybody has a concerted effort, or will have a concerted effort, obviously, in making that happen. Last thing that stood out to me in the conversation, too, was Amon-Ra St. Brown acknowledging that he believed that Tyler Shough is in the best position of any rookie quarterback this year. And I'll be hard-pressed to disagree with that. You have a lot of guys that are buried behind multiple quarterbacks. Shedeur Sanders, who should be a starter in Cleveland, is right now buried behind Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco. We'll see how long that actually lasts. Dylan Gabriel's also in that mix. Jackson Dart is buried behind Russell Wilson as well as Jameis Winston. You have Jalen Milroe buried behind Sam Darnold. And so the only other quarterback that has a direct path, and rightfully so, is the number one overall pick, one of the least talked about number one overall picks in NFL history, in my opinion, Cam Ward. And so really for me, it's between him and Tyler Shough, who have the best opportunity to be a starter in 2025 and try to find success through that path. So excellent stuff there from the St. Brown brothers, as well as Tyler Shough, in showing maturity, showing that composure, and again, standing up and endearing himself even further with the city of New Orleans. Coming up next, Vernon Broughton is not getting the credit that he deserves. We got that coming up as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by Rouge Yet. Maybe you've heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them, but now you might be looking to get beyond the usual pill. So it's time to meet Rouge Yet Ready. We're talking about a next-gen prescription treatment 3-in-1 tab that dissolves under your tongue and kicks in on average about 15 minutes, much faster than the hours it can take for the pills. 150,000 men have already made the switch. You could check out the customer reviews on their website, where you can also get hooked up with a board-certified doctor, which will help you get everything shipped directly and discreetly to your door. Just head over to rougiet.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL. Promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, and manufacturing review. Please visit Rouge Yet website for full safety information. All right, family. Third round defensive tackle and rookie Vernon Broughton is not getting the shine that he deserves. I do think that Vernon Broughton helps the New Orleans Saints in a couple of different areas. So I wanted to go ahead and provide a little bit of a deep dive. We'll take a look at his game. We'll take a look at what that means for the Saints, and we'll take a look at where it helps them. And that's where I want to start first, is where the Saints will immediately get some help from Vernon Broughton. And we've kind of set this up all throughout the week. Early on, we took a look at the explosive plays. We took a look at the run defense. We took a look at the pass rush. And these are all places where Vernon Broughton can help out. A lot of the Saints' explosive plays that they surrendered in 2025 came from the run game. Vernon Broughton is a solid run defender. He's a disruptive run defender. The Saints need to increase their pass rush. It's one thing to do it off of the edges, which they should be able to do with this new defensive scheme. But if you can also create disruption in between the tackles and generate the interior pressure, you do two things. Closest path from point A to point B between 2 points is a straight line, right? So if you're able to get that interior pressure, you're immediately in the face of the quarterback. And with NFL quarterbacks just getting smaller and smaller and smaller, it seems, every year, having a 6'5", 311 interior player that can make one move and an arm over and end up getting into the face of a quarterback, there's some real value there. Now we'll have to translate that pass rush prowess that he developed over his time with the Longhorns from the collegiate game to the NFL game, but he performed his best as he climbed up a level of competition from the Big 12 to the SEC last season. So now he gets another opportunity to climb up that competition ladder. The second thing that it does is it allows you, with some internal pressure, to flush that quarterback out of the pocket and make them run into the pressure that's being generated over on the outside. And now, with sort of these stand-up, more athletic, speedy pass rushers and this more athletically focused, speed-focused defensive scheme, flushing quarterbacks out of the pocket is going to be a good thing, because you're going to allow your athletic, speedy guys to go and close in on that play. And the eyes in the backfield from the zone coverage allows those defenders to not just have their backs turned while the quarterbacks are sprinting 40 yards down the field like we saw in Dennis Allen's scheme in the past. And then on top of all of that, just from a pass rush standpoint, being able to get to the quarterback as a whole, excellent stuff. So you're limiting the explosive plays by helping to boost your run game, and you're creating pressure for those quarterbacks and trying to get to those quarterbacks so you can finish plays at the passer with a bit more efficiency than we've seen for the New Orleans Saints in the last few years. No more boo, I'm going to scare you, a lot more instead getting to the quarterback and bringing that quarterback down is the goal for the New Orleans Saints. And a guy like Vernon Broughton absolutely helps, because he can take a one-on-one, or he can take on a double team, create one-on-ones from other players. But if you give him a one-on-one and he can get that, he's got some really good pass rush moves, needs to develop counters to where if that first pass rush move fails, then he's got to be able to come with another move, but he'll develop that over time. But if he's able to win with that first pass rush move, he's somebody that is off and running and has that mean streak in his play to where he can go after and at least try to get to that quarterback or flush them out for somebody else to get after them. So I think those are the places where he most immediately has an impact for New Orleans, all three of which very important pieces: the run game, the pass rush, and by extension, limiting the explosive plays. One of the things that I think we should look at when it comes to any player that's coming out of college and into the NFL is what their trajectory looks like. And Vernon Broughton is a safe player to look at and say, okay, he has gotten better throughout his years. For instance, when he was with the Big 12 version of the Texas Longhorns over the course of his first 4 years of college, 2.5 sacks over the course of those 4 years, 4 sacks by himself or by itself just this past season in 2024 once he got to the SEC level. 5 tackles for a loss last year, 5 tackles for a loss the year before that. And in 56 career game appearances, he's also got 70 combined tackles. That is an active player, especially for an interior defensive lineman. You're not going to see a bunch of interior defensive linemen with 10 plus sacks and 15 plus 17 plus 20 plus tackles for a loss. Instead, what you're really looking for is, can you get 5 of each? Can you get about a handful? How much for one rib? That's what I just kind of felt like I was leaning in towards there. But so on top of all that, 20 plus, 30 plus tackles in a season, 39 tackles last year, his career high with the Longhorns. So even though he played sort of that heavy rotational role throughout the majority of his time with the Longhorns, he did pick up a little bit more of I would call it a more meaningful role or a more consistent role in the defense this past year, even though he was operating behind a guy like Alfred Collins, who was one of everybody's favorite defensive tackles. And in times, he looked like a more disruptive player on tape than Alfred Collins did. And so now you take that development that he has shown, the kind of upward trajectory that you've seen, and then you put him back with Bo Davis, one of the best defensive line development coaches in the game of football. I'm not talking about college football. I'm not talking about spring leagues. I'm not talking about the NFL. I'm talking about all of football. One of the best developers of defensive line talent. You get him back with him because the two overlapped in Vernon Broughton's early days with the Texas Longhorns. And so now you get those two back and you get an opportunity to continue to develop. And that's where certain things like bulking up the lower half of the body. He's got a stockier build up top, but I think Bo Davis even called him chicken legs when he called him to make the draft phone call. He was like, "What's good, chicken legs?" And so like you get the opportunity now to get to the NFL, get to the best coaching that you've had in your career, get to the best facility that you've had in your career, and ideally put together a plan to bulk up that lower half, develop those counter pass rush moves, things like that as well. Let's go a little bit deeper beyond just the basic stats of tackles, sacks, and tackles for a loss. One metric that I really like when we're gauging the idea of how effective a player is on the defensive line at stopping the run is average depth of tackle. It's been a little while, but it's something we've talked about quite a bit here on the show in the past, and the Saints have struggled here. Vernon Broughton had last year a 2.7 yard average depth of tackle. What that means is that on average, when he was making tackles in the run game, the running back had picked up less than 3 yards, about 2.7 yards. And you can look at this 2025 draft class and you can find some fantastic numbers like 0.6, so less than a yard from Mason Graham, 0.8 rather, less than a yard from Mason Graham. You can find from Darius Alexander, 1.2 yards. But here's the reason why 2.7 is not a bad number by any stretch of the imagination. Last year, the Saints had two interior defensive linemen that had a better mark when it came to average depth of tackle than Vernon Broughton had in college last year. Nathan Shepard, 2.4. John Ridgway, 2.6. End of list. That's it. You look at the other guys, Brian Brzee, 3.3. Colin Saunders, 4.2. Christian Boyd, 6.0, although he only played 38 run defense snaps. And so for the Saints, getting a guy like Vernon Broughton, who's got quick hands, who has a mean streak, who can play physical, who can get a little bit high in terms of shoulder pad level sometimes, or pad level sometimes, but you can work on that, and has sort of fixable things in his game, development ahead of him, and that is already producing at a better rate in the run game than some of the Saints' incumbent interior defensive linemen. The New Orleans Saints made a solid pick at number 71 with Vernon Broughton, even though he wasn't a consensus top 75 pick. And so I think Vernon Broughton could be a big-time piece for what the Saints are looking to do and how they're looking to flip their defense over the course of the next few coming years. Coming up next, the New Orleans Saints also made another big addition in replacing their director of rehabilitation. Let me introduce you to Garrett Holle. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Have you ever decided last minute that you wanted to head to Poydras and bring a group of family and friends and check out a Saints game? Maybe on game day, the bug bites and you suddenly realize that you want to be there in the stands. Well, that's exactly where Game Time comes in, because it's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. And the money that you'll save in those tickets, you can then use to splurge on food, drinks. You know, the Saints have the Superdome's big time upgraded some of their hospitality stuff, their food and beverage stuff. You can get into some merch or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes all of it possible with things like zone deals as well. And of course, all-in pricing, which you can toggle on so that you don't have any surprise fees when you get to checkout. You get to take all the guesswork out of buying tickets by using Game Time today. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. You'll get $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints might have made a sneaky, valuable, difference-making replacement decision on Thursday. The Saints saw early on in June, a few weeks ago, the director of rehabilitation, Jonathan Gress, leave the Saints and go and join the Oklahoma Sooners. And forgive me for saying this so bluntly, it could be a blessing in disguise for New Orleans. Rehab was not one of the places where the Saints have been their strongest, right? You look at the setbacks for guys like Jameis Winston, setback for Michael Thomas, of course, which created a whole flurry of bigger situations. Setbacks in certain cases, even for guys like Marshawn Lattimore a little bit. You look just to last year, Bub Means had a setback, right? You also look at some of the other things that happen with like practice injuries and stuff like that. That's not really a rehabilitation thing, but you've seen some of these instances for New Orleans to where they've been in the process of getting somebody back on the field. There's been a timeline that, set, Dennis Allen, when he would say like, yeah, we're not sure. We know it's not season ending, whatever. And then your players trying to get back. And then all of a sudden, there was a setback and their season's over. But what? Like there were a little bit too many of those. And I think for any organization that's putting their trust in somebody to lead a department that will, or lead a section of a department that is focused on getting players back out on the football field healthy and ready to go while they maintain their athleticism, while they maintain their speed, while they maintain the core of what it is that makes them great. And that has failed to do that even once, it's one too many times. And especially when it's a full-on setback in a rehabilitation environment. I imagine that's really annoying for an organization. It's certainly been very annoying for the fan base. Well, the Saints took their time here. There was a time where I wasn't even sure if they were going to replace this position at all. We saw the Philadelphia Eagles do this not too long ago. They had a director of rehabilitation. She ended up leaving. Then the the Eagles ended up hiring somebody to come in as a director of sports performance. And then the director of sports performance just kind of absorbed the responsibilities of the former director of rehabilitation role. I wondered if Ted Rath, who has been given a lot of credit around the NFL for his time with the Rams, his time with the Eagles, for helping to put together some of the healthiest rosters in the NFL. I wondered if maybe he would do that, if he would just absorb the responsibility. That is not the direction that the Saints went. I think wisely, not because I doubt Ted Rath's ability to do it, but I think anytime that you have a big responsibility role like director of rehabilitation and getting your players back out on the field in a timely manner and doing so without costing them production on the back end as they return, that should probably be somebody's sole focus and not just a part of the pages and pages and pages of responsibilities for all of the things that a guy like Ted Rath, who's insanely smart and insanely successful at this kind of stuff, would have to also try to manage at the same time. Put this in somebody's hands, let them focus in on. That's what Kellen Moore, Mickey Loomis, and the New Orleans Saints ended up doing. They hire from Boise State, funny enough, Garrett Holle, who comes in and helps this team as their director of rehabilitation. He had been he held this like associate athletic director and health, of rehabilitation and health and safety, health and science, whatever it was, everything. He held this kind of larger position with Boise State, and then now arrives here in New Orleans to focus on helping players get back out on the field quickly and effectively. And I think the effectively part is a really, really important piece of this equation, because you can get them back out on the field quickly. But does that mean that they don't stay on the field very long, or does that mean that they're less effective when they're on the field? You can't let either of those things be the case. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about Garrett Holle here, not just because, oh, look, they hired him and then we'll move on, but I want to give you an idea of the work that he has done before. This is a guy that brings in a big time, vast education from time with Fort Hays State, where he was also a wide receiver at one point, where he studied biology. He then went on to study personal training over at Kansas, graduated there in 2019, and then North Arizona, finishing up a master's degree in athletic training in 2023. He then immediately went to Boise State. The reason why it's important that I say that he went to Boise State is not because it's the same alma mater as Kellen Moore, although I'm sure that there was some phone calls made, hey, tell me a little bit about this guy kind of stuff. I would not be shocked by that. But these two did not overlap, of course, during their time at Boise State. It just happens to be the same alma mater. So, but the reason why I do highlight it is because there was a wide receiver at Boise State by the name of Latrell Caples. And pretty much upon his arrival at Boise, you saw an Achilles tear for this young, talented, speedy, high character wide receiver. And I highlight high character because the way that Garrett Holle went in making sure that Caples stayed motivated, stayed positive, and came out on the other side, not just with a physical recovery, but as Holle himself highlighted in an interview with Boise State's team website, he was also very proud of the man that he became throughout the rehabilitation process. A core caring or giving a bleep about a human being. And I think that that is a really important piece to the rehabilitation process. I'm not saying that that wasn't a part of what the Saints did before. I'm just saying that when you get an opportunity to replace this position, go and find somebody that cares. Not to say that the people before didn't or the person before didn't and Jonathan Kress, that's not what this is. But that should be a prerequisite for finding the new guy. And I think that the New Orleans Saints did that. He utilized Aaron Rodgers' goal of getting back on the field as quickly as possible as a means of motivating Caples. Use things like progress videos so that they could track progress all the time so that if Caples ever got to the point where he was feeling down about the progress, they could go back and watch some of his old videos to see, hey, here's where you were. Now here's where you are just from yesterday. They documented every bit of the rehabilitation process to keep Caples in good spirits and got him back out on the field. And I think that is such a cool story. And so I just wanted to share that with you. I think this is a solid hire for the New Orleans Saints. We'll see how much of a difference it ends up making for them when it comes to not just keeping players on the field, but in this particular instance, more importantly, getting players back out on the field when the inherent attrition that takes place in the NFL does take place. All right, coming up in tomorrow's episode over the weekend, I want to take a look at some more stat predictions. So give me your bold predictions, and we'll see what we can track throughout this weekend. We appreciate you very much, as always, making us a party day part of your routine for saying yes to me and the show. If you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.